Yes, I am working on the next episode of Mario and Sonic. I just want to try out something else to avoid falling into a content trap. In 1996, Capcom released the first installment of Marvel vs. Capcom, known as X-Men vs. Street Fighter, for arcades. And a year later, the first console it was ported to was the SEGA Saturn, and that got my brain churning. What if instead of Marvel fighting Capcom, we got Marvel vs. SEGA? In lieu of another creator, I found it appropriate to gauge the size of the roster. After thinking, I went with 42 for the base roster, 21 for each side. But without further ado, let's get to our first characters in. First on our Marvel side, we have to get one of the most popular Marvel characters in, and that's Spider-Man. Do you really need me to justify this one? He's Spider-Man! Let him do his web thing and beat up the adorable SEGA rodents. SEGA! Yeah, just like with Spider-Man, we can't just not include Sonic on this hypothetical roster. If SEGA is making a crossover game, Sonic is going to be there. Also, he's in several fighting games already, so it's not like he has a lack of moves. Not that anyone says he didn't. Let this man fight against the Marvel heroes and villains that are definitely going to underestimate him. This guy started Marvel's whole MCU thing that made them just a little bit of money. And also he's an Avenger, so I feel like Iron Man deserves a little spot here. Probably crack a joke at just how many animals the SEGA site has, because trust me, Sonic series isn't the only one filling SEGA up. SEGA! Yeah, Tails is in here too. If Sonic and SEGA All-Stars is proof of anything, it's that if Sonic gets into a big SEGA crossover, Tails is likely coming to join him too. You could even have like an interaction with Iron Man about their tech and just totally geek out how cool Tony Sue is. Maybe even after Tails' classic mode, Tony makes him an Iron Fox suit. The Hulk is one of the most iconic heroes, despite the fact that most of his repertoire is Bunga Bunga move. But given how strong he is, a simple few punches and kicks are enough to make people love you. You can also just make meteors fall down upon the others and say stuff like, Hulk smash, puny blue mouse! SEGA! I am Nipples the Enchilada. I can break anything with my rock-hard fist nipples. Knuckles is a third Sonic character on the roster, but given he's on Team Sonic and is in pretty much every Sonic and SEGA All-Stars game, I feel like his inclusion is worth it. It also gives the SEGA side their own Unga Bunga fighter. And an interaction with Hulk could be like, Puny red rat! Then throws a big rock, only for Knuckles to match him, shocking everyone. We need Deadpool as a Marvel silly man to bounce off the later SEGA characters. He could mess with the health bars or joke about the games, or even poke fun at the Sonic fanbase. He'd also wield his guns, like our next fighter. SEGA! For his neutral special, he wields Gun. Yeah, Persona 5 is probably the biggest Shin Megami Tensei game, even if it is a spin-off. It's a slightly more grounded character, given that he's actually a human on the SEGA side. It wasn't too hard to justify to put him on here. SEGA has plenty of little animals, so it's only fair that Marvel gets him on the phone with Rocket. Also, the Guardians of the Galaxy are huge now, so people would be excited to play him. Easy choice. Especially thinking about him and Tails interacting. Smart fluffy gremlin meeting a smart fluffy bean. SEGA! You might be wondering why Monkey Ball Guy is here. Well, I mean, if you look at SEGA commercials, they felt confident enough in II to let him appear with Sonic on the marketing for Sonic and SEGA All-Stars.
But he can't fight.
Well, there's versus modes in the game, so go eat a banana, you unimaginative poohead. If the movies are anything to go by, if the Marvel and SEGA continuities collided, Doctor Strange is definitely going to show up there to maintain the peace. Probably wouldn't even be shocked at monkeys and balls or fast hedgehogs. Also, magic users in fighting games are awesome.
SEGA!
Knight's being in here would be so cool. I'm gonna look it up. Up to interpretation. Got it. Her inclusion is less cemented because her series is probably very dead. But the original game on Sega Saturn is regarded as one of the best games of all time. Also, it'd give more rep for Sonic Team outside of just Sonic. Like it or not, her MCU adaptation has made her popular enough to warrant a spot on this roster. She's also one of the most down-to-earth fighters present on this roster. It would also be really funny to see her ruthlessly use assassin tactics on Ai, who is likely in a ball.
SEGA!
Amy has gotten a surge of relevancy now that Sega is pushing her as the fourth big hero of Sonic. And I mean a big push. They even put her symbol before Knuckles in their short, Fast Friends Forever. Even so, she's still one of the more popular characters in the series. And she even uses a hammer like someone else later down the line. And besides, like Black Widow, someone needs to hold the boys together. I like the Falcon. He also got his own mini-series a few years back, so I assume he's relevant and popular enough to warrant himself a spot. It also allows for less big-name Avengers to join. Also, again, I really like the Falcon. And Tails could also interact with him by complimenting his wings, only for Falcon to say something like, nice tails.
SEGA!
Imagine how funny it would be to roll out a giant egg and hit the Hulk with it, and the guy who did it just goes, "Good morning!" Then Hulk beats the ever-loving crap out of Billy. That alone justifies him being here. Another thing justifying him is another Sonic Team character who isn't a Sonic character. Letting them show off more IPs they've done. I wanted some slightly more obscure picks, and people were excited to see him in Multiverse of Madness. I think people's minds will be blown to see Black Bolt included. Also, he'd be kind of unique. He just screams at you, and that's funny. And he'd finally get a theme of his own.
SEGA!
Another really wacky pick. Echo could have a much better moveset than you'd expect. He can use, like, deadly sound waves, turn into sharks or vortex drones. Also, no one would be expecting a literal dolphin to be added. And before you say, oh, Sega can't make a moveset for a dolphin, they put a car in another fighting game, so I don't want to hear it. Come on, Doctor Doom. One of the most iconic Marvel villains. The Fantastic Four villain in, like, Foot Dive! I don't really need to explain our reasoning for him being here, because Doctor Doom is cool and people would be excited for him. I have to be an idiot to think about cutting them.
SEGA!
Jet Set Radio! He deserves it. This game was ahead of its time, just like the Dreamcast. He's basically the Dreamcast mascot. He has to be in here. He's in every other Sega crossover. He just belongs here. I wanted him to graffiti the Avengers base or the X-Mansion. Thor is one of my favorite Avengers and one of the MCU's big four. He's popular enough to warrant a spot. He's in a lot of Marvel games already. Imagine an interaction with Amy where they compare hammers and compliment them.
SEGA!
Sega's mascot before Sonic. Alex belongs here for sure. Sega still remembers him. He was even a free Christmas update in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed. As a previous Sega mascot, it just makes sense to include him for a big crossover involving characters from Sega's history. Sonic and Alex could even interact with each other. I want an Eldritch Genie in here, for no other reason than he looks cool. McGrath also asks as a wacky non-humanoid, and we know Sega is already full of those, so why not let Marvel get in on it? He's also a more obscure pick than the other obvious ones I have. Also, I want to see what he has to say to the other characters on the list, like, "You call yourself an ultimate life form? You're nothing but an animal off a leash." Oop, I wasn't supposed to mention him yet.
SEGA!
Another Knights character. I know he'd be wanted. We also need more villains on the Sega side. If Knights is here, then Rayla would certainly want to go after her. I also want to hear his silky smooth voice insult the other characters. Mechanized organism designed only for killing should be in here. I just want some big head floating around and fighting these characters. He's as wacky as the dolphin on Sega's side. I want mechanized organisms designed only for killing to fight with a literal dolphin.
SEGA!
Sonic's big villain, Eggman. He 100% deserves a spot here. He'd show up to the Marvel characters and literally never admit that any of them are as smart as him. A mech suit with maths and lasers? Why were that? You can send robots to do it for you. He'd also get annoyed with Rocket's existence because he'd remind him of the Mobians. Despite what the MCU is doing with her right now, Scarlet Witch is pretty popular today. We can get magic floaty powers in the game. She can even have like a rage meter before going berserk upon the enemy team. She could also have a fun interaction with someone else on the roster.
SEGA!
She would make a good inclusion. She would fit right in as a witch herself. She even slays gods like the big boys do. She could even comment on Scarlet Witch. Like if they're on a team, she says something like, "As the saying goes, don't mess with the witch." I know she doesn't say mess, but like it'd be a hard sell to get a word that vulgar in, and I also don't like saying it. You didn't think I'd be leaving out the X-Men, did you? You have to be a monumental idiot to cut them. I don't have to justify Wolverine's inclusion. He's awesome, my childhood favorite behind Spidey himself. Wolverine deserves a spot here. If he wasn't included, this game would be dead on arrival.
SEGA!
There would be riots if Shadow wasn't in here. Sonic was rival and the series' second most popular character. It was not hard to justify him being here. He put some Marvel villains in their place if they dare underestimate him, like McGrath. "You're hideous. Here, let me put you out of your misery." Cap wasn't getting cut. Are you crazy? Yes, the MCU has butted into MVC and created a disaster, but you'd be insane to not think Cap wouldn't be getting in on this one with clout like that.
SEGA!
Opa Opa brings some quartet missiles into play. Sound dangerous? They are! No, this is not a Winged Among Us. This is Opa Opa, Sega's first ever mascot. With a title like that, I believe he earned a spot. Fantasy Zone is also one of the best games on the Master System, which is apparently still sold in Brazil, so they love him. I saw the sales of Infinity War game. He's in. He's the Avengers villain. Probably the biggest and most notorious villain here. Thanos would bring some menace, especially since he'd be just beating the ever-loving crap out of cute things like Opa Opa.
SEGA!
Peak puzzle game. Puyo Puyo is Sega's flagship puzzle game, and I chose Arle to represent it. People would be excited to see her, and Puyo Puyo to represent it at all. Ghost Rider is really cool. I want him. Could you imagine him doing the penance stare on Eggman? That's what he gets for doing that to the moon. Or doing it to Billy and nothing happens because he's a little egg boy. Or him and Shadow comparing motorcycles.
SEGA!
Looking cool, Joker! He forces you to go to bed. He'd be the fun little man, just a little scrimble. And also another Persona character. You can turn to a van. Let's go! People will adore this little guy, and he also goes meow. I had to go with a personal pick here. I love Ultron. He'd probably have some fun interactions with another on here. We also need more robot representation with the coming age of soulless AI junk.
SEGA!
Sonic's biggest rival, my favorite mainstay villain of his. Metal constantly disobeys Eggman so he can have a big presence, like copying certain attacks. Or in the story mode, he straight up scans and becomes an Ultron Metal Overlord thing. Sounds a bit close to another thing, but like, shut up. As we all know, characters are function, and X-Men are popular. I really like Magneto because of what he can do, not because of his character. Yeah, nah, Magneto is epic and he deserves a spot as an X-Men villain, anti-villain, anti-hero, or whatever he's here because he's cool.
SEGA!
BD Joe. If Sega can make a car into a moveset, surely they can make one for a guy who drives a crazy taxi. Also, my brother and I constantly have to deal with him in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, so I will gladly take the chance to beat him up in a fighting game. I like Venom, and also Spider-Man is huge. He fit in as an anti-hero slot to rep some more Spidey. Also, his movies were received well and made some money. They wouldn't pass him up.
SEGA!
Here's someone you would never guess within a million years. The Ooze from the Ooze. Like, as the fight goes on, he grows stronger and he becomes all gloopy in fighting. Looks can also be deceiving since this guy's a hero. Like in the story mode, some villains recruit him and he just fights them, only to join the heroes.